So as soon as that storm passed in the very wee hours of the morning, first responders from the local, state, and federal level descended on Southwest Florida. The Coast Guard has been performing rescue missions on the barrier islands consistently since the wee hours of the morning. We have Florida Guard assets on the ground participating in efforts, and we have our USAR teams who they got there even while the winds were going. They wanted to get in there, get on the ground across Alligator Alley, and they are performing rescue efforts, again, starting with those barrier islands, but also looking at the places that had the most inland flooding. And these operations are ongoing. In total, there's 28 large, mostly Chinooks and Blackhawks helicopters between the National Guard and Coast Guard that are already performing these active rescue missions, and there will be more air assets brought in as the day goes on. We've also been working with hospitals overnight who've been on generator power. We're in the process of evacuating 2 healthcare facilities to safer locations north. We're also surging more medical personnel into the area. As of 6 a.m. this morning, they have 2.02 million reported power outages, but outside of Southwest Florida, we may have additional outages from Central and Northeast Florida impacts, and people should anticipate that. If you look, there's 1.5 million outages in 7 Southwest Florida counties. Lee and Charlotte are basically off the grid at this point. Sarasota has 250,000 without power. Hillsborough, 222,000. Pinellas, 150,000. Manatee, 129,000. The Charlotte and Lee reconnects are really going to likely have to be rebuilding of that infrastructure. And so there are linemen, there are crews that are on their way down right now, but that's going to be more than just connecting a power line back to a pole. The other counties likely are not going to require the extent of the structural rebuild, but of course that's going to be assessed as the day goes on. But we do have huge amounts of resources that are en route and are going to work to get people's power on as quickly as possible. We've also had interruptions in communications as a result of the storm, particularly in Southwest Florida. We have 100 portable cell towers being deployed into the area. And those would be put up once it's fully safe to do so. FDOT is on the ground working on making sure that the roads and interstates are open. Alligator Alley on 75 across into Collier and into Lee County is open. The traffic is flowing. I-75 south through Charlotte County is open and flowing. Portions of Lee County they're still looking at. As you know, some of those areas, Cape Coral, city of Fort Myers, they got really, really inundated and really devastated by this storm. So the hope is that all of 75 will be open, but most of it is open, and it gives us what we need to be able to continue to move supplies into the area. We have 100 engineers on site to do bridge inspections, and they work in teams of 2. As they assess the damage and they can ensure safety, then bridges can be safely reopened. Now, of course, we do have reports of structural damages to bridges, such as the bridge going on to Sanibel Island, and I anticipate there will likely be other bridges that have suffered damage. But once bridges are inspected and determined to be safe, they will be reopened as soon as possible. But we know Sanibel Causeway, and we also know Pine Island Bridge. Those two are not passable, and they are going to require structural rebuilds. Right now, if you look in Central Florida, you're looking at potential major flooding in Orange and Seminole counties, St. Johns River, all the way up potentially into Northeast Florida and Jacksonville. The amount of water that's been rising and will likely continue to rise today, even as the storm is passing, is basically a 500-year flood event. And I know Seminole County has done evacuations. I know they've opened shelters, but We're going to see a lot of images about the destruction that was done in Southwest Florida, and obviously we have massive assets there. But people should just understand this storm is having broad impacts across the state, and some of the flooding you're going to see in areas hundreds of miles from where this made landfall are going to set records, and that's going to obviously be things that that will need to be responded to. We have, of course, massive amounts of food and water in the area. We're going to have probably close to 300 truckloads of food and water in the area today. Fortunately, most of our school districts will be able to reopen on Friday or Monday. Lee County is in a very difficult situation, Charlotte, so we're going to work with them and see when they can get back on their feet. But the damage there has been just so extensive that it's a very difficult situation. We have received a major disaster declaration for 9 counties, but we do expect more. I just spoke with the president this morning. He offered support. I told him thanks for this, but because the storm has moved inland and caused a lot of potential damage in the center part of our state, that we were going to be asking for those counties to be expanded and included there. But for now, we have approval for Charlotte, Collier, DeSoto, Hardy, Hillsborough, Lee, Manatee, Pinellas, and Sarasota. That will allow individual Floridians to seek individual assistance from FEMA. And that will be something that, as you have people that have been displaced due to the catastrophic impacts of Hurricane Ian, that's going to be something that's going to be necessary. We have been granted 100% federal assistance, Category A and B, up front for 30 days to ensure we can quickly move forward into this response and recovery situation. FEMA has, as I mentioned, activated individual assistance for those in need of help who qualify. You go to FEMA.gov, or you can call 1-800-621-3262. Make sure you take a picture of the water line in your home, because if you can show that, we're able to get assistance to you faster. As people have emerged this morning, particularly in the areas that were hard hit, just understand this is still a hazardous situation. Those folks that were in there in the wee hours of the morning were taking big risks as first responders navigating this. You have power lines that are down, you have trees that are down, you have a lot of hazards right now. We do anticipate a lot of the water will subside in some of the barrier islands and some of the coasts, but some of those inland places off rivers and off these inlets, you're likely to have standing water there throughout all of today and even in the days ahead. So that is a hazard, and just please be aware that is something that if you weathered the storm to this point, going and doing and getting involved in that is just totally not worth it, and we want to minimize any harm to anybody as a result of what we're seeing right now in the streets. We have had 26 states provide support. We really appreciate that. It's going to be put to use. This is, I don't think we've ever seen an effort mobilized for this many rescues this quickly, but we appreciate it, and we will make good use of it. We want people to be safe. Those who are in need of life support right now, help is on the way. What they were able to do is look to see where the areas that were the hardest hit, and they've been focusing assets there. So obviously the barrier islands, but then you also have places along these different inlets and different rivers where people said the water was rising. They were calling into the county or calling 911. And so they have a pretty good sense of where those calls were coming from, and they're focusing their rescue efforts on those areas that were most hard hit. And again, I just want to thank the urban search and rescue teams, the National Guard, the state resources, and the Coast Guard for not waiting around, but going in there and understanding that time is of the essence, and we got a lot of people we need to help. For those looking to help, people say, what can we do? Well, the First Lady is spearheading our efforts with Volunteer Florida to activate the Florida Disaster Fund, where people can donate. It's much better to donate financially rather than sending items. We've got a lot of items, and that resources, financial resources, can really help people get their unique needs met. We have everything we need in terms of supply, but if you go to floridadisasterfund.org or text disaster to 20222, you can provide some much appreciated assistance. And if you want to volunteer, you have official volunteer portal at www.volunteerflorida.org to find volunteer opportunities. The impacts of this storm are historic, and the damage that was done has been historic. And this is just off initial assessments. There's going to be a lot more assessing that goes on in the days ahead, but I think we've never seen a flood event like this. We've never seen storm surge of this magnitude, and it hit an area where there's a lot of people in a lot of those low-lying areas, and it's going to end up doing extensive damage to a lot of people's homes. So there's going to be a lot of work to do. Today is about identifying the people that need help, who may still be in harm's way, but also beginning the process of rebuilding some of the things that we need to have services restored, to have fuel, and to have the things that people need in terms of communications. I want to thank Kevin Guthrie for having these assets ready to go. We're going to use every bit of them, and we're going to be there until all the tasks are completed.